Other issue we talked about, and thank you for all that input. And we have a little difference of opinion perhaps as to how the FedRAMP system currently works as it relates to inquiring into the origin of software or code in a cloud service offering. But that's a factual matter. We just need to be sure we all understand. And I do think that this risk is only going to increase, as was said. And to Mr. Shive's point, I don't think that's prescriptive language at all. In fact, it gives you the ability to be able to do what I assume you would want to do anyway, but make sure that it gets done. In terms of potential conflicts of interest, looks like we're going to have some differences of opinion on this too, and that's good. That's how we end up with legislation that actually makes sense. I just look at this and I think, all of you respect your 3 PAOs. This is for those who might be listening and aren't following all the acronyms. That's the third party assessment organization. And these are groups that do the assessment, but at the behest of the company that's providing the cloud services. So as I understand it, they pay for the service and they choose the 3 PAO. Is that correct? Now, again, I'm sure that the 3 PAOs that you all work with are all respectable folks and so on, but that just seems like a potential conflict of interest to me. And isn't there a better way to do it so that you get an assessment that doesn't have that, to use the word cloud a little differently, that cloud in terms of what the conclusion is? And one idea I've had is, rather than relying on private sector third parties who are paid for by the cloud service provider, is to get a panel of experts. In this case, GSA, NIST would be involved, and have that panel of experts assess the security of the FedRAMP services. And the cost would not be borne by taxpayers; it would be borne by the user, which is the same company that was going to pay this company on the private side that they had chosen, that they're paying, to give them the answer. Instead, you'd be using an entity which is independent, and there would be a user fee attached to it. So there wouldn't be an additional cost, but there would be a distance there. In other words, an assurance that this conflict of interest would not be present. So what do you all think about that? Is that a crazy idea? Is that something you thought about? And do you have other ideas? Let's start with you, Ms. Mann.
Thank you. So when we first established the program many years back, the 3 PAO program, we mimicked it after how industry, like traditional certification programs that industry typically goes out and seeks today. And so we developed a framework using the ISO 17020 standards, which is an industry recognized industry recognized standard, and there continues. Within that standard, there's impartiality and independence clauses. So we continue. We have a robust monitoring program on FedRAMP that whenever we receive assessments from 3 PAOs, we provide feedback. There's performance escalation criteria as well to help support and to monitor 3 PAO performance, especially when it comes to this area. As a program, and I appreciate your suggestion, Senator, we are always receptive to feedback. We'll take it into consideration, continue to work with the community as well as our stakeholders to drive change on the program. I will say that the 3 PAOs play an absolutely critical role within this FedRAMP ecosystem. They are charged with validating that the security implementations from cloud service providers are true and accurate, which gives agencies in turn the ability to make those risk-based decisions in terms of using those cloud systems. So we are absolutely on board to continue evolving this program, but just note that the way that we did establish it was also based on industry recognized protocols that are in place today with other certification programs.
Go back to you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, Senator, I would say Zscaler is a public company, and we pay Pricewaterhouse to come do our audits, our financials. I don't see the difference. I don't see a difference. I pay when I go to get my ISO. I run our global compliance. whether it's my GDPR for the EU or whether it's my IRAP in Australia or whether it's my ISO or my SOC 2 or my SOX. I'm always paying an independent auditor that I hired. I think that the FedRAMP policy is in line with almost every other audit that we do across the corporate world. And I think that, you have to believe that your 3PAO is going to be ethical and do their job. And if they don't, with me as a CSP would throw them out. And I've done it, for sure. And I will tell you that it's a thing that it stops at just the 3PAO. It doesn't. But once we finish our 3PAO and we get they said, okay, then it goes into the FedRAMP world where they now do their, and as Ashley just said, Ms. Mahan just said, they do their assessment of our 3PAO's work, and in a jab, they literally do the work all over again. So they're heavily involved in this process. I think that trying to find a way to regulate it to a group of people is going to slow the process tremendously. And I think it's the way that, like I said earlier, it's the way we do all our independent audits, and I would be troubled to get away from that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I make the obvious point that we've had some captured auditors as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And this is about security. So it's not about auditing your books. It's about ensuring that we don't have the terrible situation that could occur where you have a lack of security within the cloud services that the federal government and we taxpayers are all relying on. And so it's a different sort of assessment than what Deloitte might do for your company in terms of an audit. Any other thoughts on Mr. Stern? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, Senator Portman. Thanks for asking. So, first of all, I think 3PAOs are absolutely necessary to have a scalable program, which means a program where you can bring services on and authorize services in a timely manner, on the one hand. On the other hand, I think one potential approach here is to have the 3PAOs directly under the supervision and assigned by GSA. So that if GSA hires the 3PAO and assigns the 3PAO, and where the company pays as part of some sort of fee to have it done, but the 3PAOs are hired and assigned by GSA, that may be the solution.
Yeah, that's something that I think makes some sense too to look at, because you could have a panel of various auditors in essence, and instead of having the company choose the auditor, it would be from a group of auditors that you all, being GSA, have certified. And in essence, you're certifying them anyway, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So you could make the decision, even on an arbitrary basis if necessary, which would cut out obviously that issue of you're choosing your own 3PAO auditor and paying that auditor. You'd still pay, but you would be paying a fee. So I think that's an interesting idea as well. My final one is just on the cost and the timing and the compliance burdens, the consistency across agencies. What can be done to improve that? Mr. Fisick, I'm going to ask you to address that.
Thanks, Senator. And for one moment, I'd just like to address that, having can you hear me? Is it working? Okay, thank you. Just 1 second, please. I would say that, having the GSA or the FedRAMP PMO select your 3PAO, it works against smaller organizations from a cost perspective, kind of leading to the next question here. We create efficiencies at scale where I have 15 global certifications we maintain. If I use Shellman or Coalfire or these larger global organizations that are well respected, number 1 and 2 at FedRAMP authorizations, it really works against us as a smaller org. Sure, we'll get some benefits of GSA at scale for the government, engages them, but that's a concern there. And then moving down the path was just the overall maintenance for we're a FedRAMP tailored low. We don't have a lot of PI. We've heard a lot of high, moderate, supporting these large organizations. We support libraries, Library of Congress, libraries on military installations, as part of our core support to the federal government. And we, as a library services company, we don't charge a lot of money as a not-for-profit. So some of the concerns we have is, I have two full-time governance analysts running. I have a full ServiceNow, which is a governance risk and compliance system running. I have 400 developers. We have 150 applications, 26 are in FedRAMP scope, but the churn created for smaller organizations, we spend up to $10 million a year as a not-for-profit that makes 200 a year on security and, trying to do the right thing and support our customers. So I think that as we talk about these highs, moderates, lows, we really need to think the impacts to the smaller organizations and maybe an additional lens of risk. So I understand, 30, 90, 60 days to remediate any sort of vulnerability. That's a huge impact for a smaller organization. If there was just that additional risk assessment, say, okay, these guys, they know what book you took out, right? Why are they even in the program? Sure, it helps us. It's an easy framework. I communicate to the board. I can do all these things. And it's just good practice and things we do anyway. But the sunk cost to do that, it really impacts our bottom line and serving the communities and some of the least represented people globally. It's not just in the U.S. of the community, the communities we serve. So I'd ask the community to look at that, think about that additional lens, a true risk picture outside of, these mandatory high level, moderates or lows. Let's put some reality check in there. We're smart enough where we can just, look at an organization and formalize that. Just an additional check or an outside agency look, say, okay, OCLC or another smaller company, you don't really have a lot of data that the federal government is concerned about. Maybe we can lower that risk level, lower the costs. Some of those reporting compliance requirements, monthly reporting, going through the churn of POAMs and all these other things. And I am a fan of FedRAMP. I've been with the program for 4 years. It's continually evolved and gotten better. And I think it's the right thing for the government to do as somebody who worked for the DoD before, and I fully support it, but just ask for the team to look at it through that additional risk lens and be cognizant of the small guys out there because it really hurts us. It's what we want to do, but just that administrative overhead is massive. We're not a Zscaler. We're not all these companies. We got a 10-person security team working 15 hours a day trying to do the right thing. And I thank you for the time.
Yeah, that's great input. Thank you. And it's about size, but it's also about degree of risk. So you could be a small company, but be in a highly sensitive area, a high risk area in terms of your data, and vice versa. You could be a larger company, a for-profit company that doesn't have that kind of risk. That's very helpful, and that goes to the compliance burdens. And again, want to end up with the best services being provided, and do it at the most cost-effective way possible, and then taking into account this increasing issue of foreign interference and being sure you're doing everything to avoid the foreign hackers from getting into your system and getting into our cloud. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.